Hello. Hi, Catherine.
Hi.
Oh, God.
Michael, hello.
Hello there. I gotta change. Hold on. I'm gonna go away. I think I'm logged in as the town. See you in a minute.
Yeah, okay. Hello, Tom. Mateo, Arlene.
Hi, Nathan. Hi, everybody.
Hello, Jim. I don't know if you're here as a member of the public or if you're on the Board of Health maybe, or,
Just a member of the public.
all right, well, glad you're here.
Thanks.
Let's see your shirt, Michael.
I'm sorry, I didn't think of the flannel.
I blew it. But me and Nathan have hats, so I gotta write myself a note, Keith. Sorry about that.
All right, we've got a quorum with 4 members, so I will call this meeting of the Shutesbury Planning Board to order. I'll note that the meeting is being recorded. All members are attending virtually. So far in attendance, we have Michael De Chiara, Steve Bressler, Keith Hasty, Ashley Pycroft, welcome. I see Jeff Weston has just come on. And myself, Nathan Murphy, of course. And yeah, I'll go ahead and designate Tom as to act as a member tonight. And being that we only have 6 out of 7 members here. Okay. Now, first item on the agenda, after we open the meeting, is public comment. Would anyone like to make public comment? Okay. Hearing and seeing none. We'll proceed to the next item on our agenda, which is landowner education and guidance. Is anyone here for landowner education and guidance? No? Okay. And that being the case, we'll move on to the next order of business, which is coordination with Board of Health on regulations. I see that we have Catherine Hilton and Arlene Reed on the call from the Board of Health. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I should tell you, if I may go ahead and speak,
Please do, yes.
that we're still finding our feet on this. And we are really just trying to figure things out. What we are envisioning, I think, is not we certainly don't want to ban these things. We are looking at the possibility of imposing certain, we think, We hope that they will be reasonable restrictions in 4 aspects: the size of systems, the location of systems, water usage, and quite possibly the type of battery. And so we need to get a little bit more educated on all of these. But we would also like to be coordinated with the planning board. And we'd like to know what, if there were a Board of Health regulation, what the planning board would like it to look like. If you have any kind of input for us on that.
Thank you for that introduction, Kat. I would, I'm sorry, do you prefer Catherine or Kat?
Kat is fine, Catherine. I answered to everything.
Okay, all right. Thank you. And in addition to, the planning board providing input for how the regulations look, is there anything else that you would use to categorize your initiation of coordination for your purpose here, I guess?
Can we clarify sort of the boundaries of who's dealing with what? In a recent conversation with Kat, she pointed out that we, as the Board of Health, might want to be more focused on battery energy storage systems, where the the planning board is focusing on data centers, because, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, because battery energy storage systems are considered part of a solar installation, and the planning board has limited ability to pass any sort of a bylaw on that, whereas the Board of Health has more latitude. Am I wrong about that?
Well, with energy storage systems, the state attorney general has rejected zoning bylaws or zoning bylaw amendments that prohibit energy storage facilities. And in doing so, the attorney general has cited the zoning act, which has a provision that protects solar,
Right.
and also, the Tracer Lane case, and essentially has included, energy storage systems as part of the protections that are extended to solar
Right.
facilities.
Anything that I
So
did
there is that. I mean, that can be reasonably regulated for the purpose of protecting public health and welfare, right? But it can't be it can't be unreasonably regulated or prohibited by zoning. So that's the deal with energy storage systems and zoning.
Okay.
And I see Michael is
Yeah, I was gonna
Have-
add some additional stuff just for context. So, I mean, Nathan's correct that you can't prohibit or unreasonably regulate battery storage systems because they're considered part of solar. There's on the one hand, there's a gray area of what is reasonable. We know what's not reasonable, but it's not necessarily clear what is reasonable. That's gone to land court, et cetera, et cetera. I think even though I've been following this a lot, the one thing that's unclear, so the clean energy law passed November last year, and the clean energy regulations are getting promulgated now. And so as of March 1st, 2026, the new regulations, whatever they end up being, are going to go into effect. And that'll cover solar, and it'll cover battery systems as, underneath solar. And municipalities will be asked to sort of have bylaws that are compliant with those. And so that's sort of like a moving target that I think the planning board is going to have to look at soon. We talked about that a little bit last meeting, but that's evolving. I think my understanding, having listened to Mike Hugo, is that the Board of Health has a separate channel in terms of you have more independent abilities than say a planning board because you don't operate under the zoning requirement. And so the big change, the last thing I would say is the big change at the clean energy law was that, in my opinion, the state felt that clean energy deployment was going too slowly because those pesky municipalities are like a herd of cats. So we have a planning board, you might have a ZBA, but we all had our own processes going in parallel, and so it's taking too long. And so the requirement is now that for any solar under 25 megawatts, any battery storage under 100 megawatts, it has to be a consolidated municipal permit. And they're trying to figure out what that looks like. But basically, the planning board, the Concom, whomever else needed to give a permit at the municipal level would have to come together and make one municipal opinion within a 12-month period. What is not clear to me, because no one at the state has articulated this, is whether the Board of Health would fall under that or not. I sort of think not. I think my gut, based on listening to things, is that you have a separate track that's not covered by this, because it's not about zoning and it's not about land use, it's about public health. But we as the planning board and the Concom, starting with the regs in March 1st, but for any project that starts July 1st, we would have to have a 12-month period where we're collectively working together to come up with a Shutesbury decision. The boards can come to different determinations, but it would be one consolidated decision as opposed to different processes. So it's all moving, but my feeling is that you probably have a separate independent, we could disagree as boards, we could totally disagree on how we want to approach it. So it'd be nice to coordinate, but I don't think we're beholden to each other, is my sense.
Steve?
So keep in mind that the energy storage system, battery energy storage system is one for data centers is one way to back up a data center, but you can also require, instead, we can require a generator, either diesel or propane. Propane being a much quieter way of doing backup than diesel, but we don't have, as far as solar, that's one thing, but data centers, they can have other types of backup power.
Thank you. Michael?
I was just to clarify, like on the agenda, this is coordination with the Board of Health. So we're sort of talking about like roles and responsibilities between the boards, and then we'll do minutes, and then we'll jump into the details of the data center.
Right.
Is that okay?
Right, yeah. So we're not going to talk
Okay.
about our.
And that's why I was questioning, are we splitting this up, like with the Board of Health focusing more on the battery energy storage systems regulation, whereas the data center bylaw is your domain, and yet we want to make sure we're communicating with one another as those are developed.
Yes, I think
I'll say one thing, Nathan, if I can. I mean, just historically, so the planning board 3 years ago, I can't remember now. We put together a battery energy storage system bylaw that we thought was compliant with Treasury Lane, and the Attorney General rejected it. And then the subsequent year, the planning board proposed a general bylaw for the town on energy storage systems. And so a general bylaw does not fall under the requirements of the zoning bylaw. That was also, and Wendell did the same thing. Both of those were rejected as being zoning bylaws, or they're basically, they said it's not really a general bylaw, it's a zoning bylaw, it just looks like one. So they rejected it as well. So for context, the town has twice approved a battery energy storage bylaw that's been rejected. So if the Board of Health felt like it was something that the town should do, that would be a path that you could do, and you don't have to have AG approval, as far as I could tell. So like that's at your feet to decide if that would make sense. But just historically, we've taken 2 bites of the apple in terms of energy storage, and we have yet to do anything on data centers.
Michael, was the first one energy storage, was that part of the amendment to the solar bylaw that got thrown out at the special town meeting?
It was very extensive on energy storage. I have to look back and see if it was part of the solar or if it was a
'Cause the-
standalone zoning.
I feel like the extensive one was the general bylaw.
I could look. While
And,
we're
you know,
talking.
I guess it's a moot point here now, but you know, yeah, to Michael's point, yeah, the general bylaw. I mean, one, it was, you know, basically drafted at the planning board and then handed to the select board, right? So the attorney general looked at it and said, well, you know, you're saying it's a general bylaw, but it's a zoning bylaw. You know, I think, you know, the Board of Health has different enabling statutes at the state level, right? And I mean, it all goes back to public health and welfare, and safety. So if, even though you know, basically all municipal law does go back to that, the land use and zoning has specific, provisions in the zoning act, right? That, are not applicable to Board of Health regulations. I think that's kind of where we are with that. In terms of, I mean, I think it's important to understand, both, you know, what our, you know, expectations are in terms of, you know, coordination during the formation of, your regulations in our bylaw for that matter. But also if, you know, if any part of it is also to be discussing how the coordination may take place, you know, in the future when, in theory, these, you know, regulations are set and bylaws are set, you know, like what processes, if any, do we need to modify or create? Right. So I don't know, I guess just upfront, trying to get upfront more kind of context for us to operate in this effort. But before anyone wants to go after that, I'll just hear from Ashley real quick.
Okay, so I'm just looking at the notes from our last meeting that I took. And as far as the Board of Health involvement, you know, from our conversation, it's mostly about water. And we also, I mean, I can speak for myself. I feel in over my head, you know, we're doing something that people haven't done before as far as creating this bylaw. And it's a very nascent technology and situation that's happening really fast. So one thing, just looking at the minutes from our last meeting and looking at the bylaw that we're working with, for example, there's a concern about consumptive water use. Like if we were to allow these centers to draw water at all, because it's possible to say you just simply can't use water. But if we were to allow people to draw water, how could that be regulated? And how could there be some sort of guarantee, if possible, that it's not going to affect other people's wells or other people's systems? How can we guarantee that when the water is used and when it comes out again, it's not going to be contaminated and then potentially cause a problem with the water tables, or sorry, just with people's groundwater. So that's where I think the overlap, at least from my viewpoint, could show up and where we could probably use some guidance from the Board of Health. What is consumptive groundwater use, and how do groundwater studies work? Is it possible that if someone were to apply to put one of these data centers in Shutesbury, that we could say, okay, well, if we're going to let you use water, then you need to do a groundwater study? And does the Board of Health or the Planning Board or anybody have any experience with such a thing? So these are questions that are coming up. And then also just the use of PFAS and other potentially toxic components in cooling systems that don't use water is another concern as well, that maybe the Board of Health could be involved in. That's all.
Can I respond to that, Nate?
Yeah, please do.
What Ashley's comments are suggesting to me is that we might also need to have a regulation for data centers, which I was hoping that your zoning bylaw amendments covering that would let us off the hook for that. But if we also want to, for example, require closed loop cooling so that there's not a big draw on the water, which we are adamantly opposed to in both these cases. I don't know if if the planning board can require that, or if that's something that the Board of Health would need to do as a public health measure.
I can answer that.
Please
Because
do.
we ran into this in some bylaw in the last 5 years or so. And what Donna McNichol pointed out is that the planning board can't tell another body what to do. But if you look at the draft data center bylaw, the way it's written now, it's requiring a water use report, or I forget how I termed it, but we can ask for documentation that has to come from the Board of Health, but we can't tell an applicant to go to the Board of Health or the Board of Health to do anything, but we can require something. So I think there is a tandem kind of relationship where if we're concerned about water usage, the planning board can say, we want a report that talks about, water usage. And it could just be that we want something signed off by the Board of Health that says it's okay. So they have to go to you guys to get it and then come back to us. So I think that's sort of how it's played out before and how I was trying to approach it here in the data center one.
Right, but our thought basically is that we don't want to see huge draws on the water supply anywhere. We don't want to have to be signing off on things or saying yes or no. We want to have it enshrined up front. It's closed loop. You can't be drawing millions of gallons out of our water table. So that's why I wonder if we need a regulation for that, or if there's some way of bringing both of these kinds of installations into a single regulation.
Tom has his hand up. Yes, Tom, and then Keith.
Thanks. Yeah, if I understood, I think it was Arlene's question at first, and kind of jumping on just what Catherine said. There might be practicalities and procedural ease of doing things in a certain way. Like first, the planning board does this bylaw, while the BOH does its regulation on one of the two separate topics, BESS and/or data centers. But for an end result, there's nothing preventing the planning board having bylaws about BESS and data centers, while the BOH also has regulations about BESS and data centers. So that could be an end result, and it might be a robust or strong one. It might be an unnecessary one. As Michael just pointed out, it's possible that the planning bylaw might include a BOH approval of some sort, negating the need for a BOH regulation per se. But I just wanted to put it out there that there's nothing preventing both bodies from having their own regulations or bylaws per se. And working in Wendell, where there's an active application in front of both the planning board and the Board of Health at the moment regarding a BESS application, it's interesting to see how much overlap there actually is. One example is just the fire department permit that is required by both the planning bylaw or zoning bylaw for the planning board and by the BOH regulation in Wendell. And so that permit will basically serve for both applications from the same applicant to the two different bodies. So I don't know if that leads to an answer per se, but I think a lot can be on the table if desired or useful.
Thank you, Tom. Keith?
I think when I was going through the zoning bylaw, talking about the language for water and the marijuana growing bylaw that was put in, I don't know, it was before I got here, had a pretty nice little section on on doing water studies and not impacting the water usage or quality of neighboring properties, blah, 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 which I thought covered pretty well without over prescribing anything. The other thing is that I think it would be helpful if we all differentiated these two issues. We've got a data center issue and we've got battery energy storage. And they keep getting conflated and conversations get confused. And I think people are talking past each other, I guess, sometimes. And then specific to the batteries or battery energy storage is that it would be nice if we could be precise in what we're talking about. Because battery energy storage at this point could be a household system. I could envision our elementary school getting rid of that propane generator and that 1,000-gallon propane tank and putting in a battery energy storage backup for the elementary school or any of our town buildings. So when we just do a broad brush, battery energy storage is bad, I get really uncomfortable. Because to demonize the technology, I don't think that's too strong of a word, or be so fearful of it that we basically stop in our tracks as far as decarbonizing and trying to address climate change, which is the whole point of these battery energy storage systems, is to allow us to decarbonize our economy. And somehow I think that gets lost sometimes in the opposition to or the fear of how it's going to affect us. So if we could differentiate maybe purpose of the data center, if we're talking a big utility scale data center, a 4 megawatt-hour data center, or not data center, battery energy storage like we have at the existing solar facility, or I don't know what's proposed at Wendell. I think that's a pretty big one, isn't it?
Actually, the current one is, I think it's 2.7 megawatts, the battery part of it. It's not, it wouldn't, yeah, there was one 2 years ago that was going to be 100 megawatts. But
yeah, right.
They pulled that application. Those people aren't applying it.
So I guess I just want us to realize that BESS, BESS, could be a lot of different size systems that we may not want to cripple ourselves before we know what we're doing, I guess. So that's it.
Go ahead, Michael.
Just two things. One, following up on Keith. Keith, I'm sorry, I forgot to look up the marijuana water usage, but I pulled it up now. So I know you recommended that, and we can talk about that later, but I found the spot. And then I think I was just going to add on to what I thought was Ashley's really good summary of issues and from what we talked about last time. I think the other place of overlap with the Board of Health is noise. You know, that it's in their realm of regulatory ability. You know, we talked about it in terms of the wind turbine on Baker Road. We discovered that there is a noise bylaw in town. And so we've built it in, you know, we built it into solar, I've built into data centers, but I think that's another place of overlap where it's clearly a Board of Health area as well. And depending on how these things operate, they could be noisy or not noisy. So it's something to consider.
I'm going back to, the initial email I sent out that included a memo from Mike Hugo. And so it sounds like basically after the special town meeting where the data center warrant article came up, that prompted you to reach out to them, and then they provided this memo and impressed on the importance of Board of Health being involved with potentially hazardous industries. I wonder, would it make sense rather than kind of thinking about this in terms of what the use is? To think about it in terms of, what the outcomes are. So instead of, saying, well, this is a regulation that's applicable to data centers or to energy storage systems, and maybe a set of regulations that would address groundwater contamination or, non-residential wells or water use, right? With the water use, right, the concern is obviously, competition with, residential private wells, right? If there's a drought, making sure people's wells aren't coming dry, and then obviously groundwater contamination, right? That's we don't want our water to get contaminated. But there are more things that can contaminate water than data centers and energy storage systems, right? I mean, we have light industry is allowed by special permit. There's not one word about it whatsoever, other than that it's allowed in the bylaw. Right? I mean, we don't have nothing. It's just on the use table. That's it. And then we have, we do have things on special permits where we have to go through and look at that. Yeah. But nothing specific to that use. So I wonder if, kind of might make more sense to think about it like, all right, what would we do to just generally make these protections in town? So you're not thinking about a specific industry, you're thinking about how would we generally make these protections? How would we do that in a way that makes sense? I don't know if that's makes sense or if it's, I mean, obviously some things are specific, right? Like, with battery, energy storage systems, right? You're worried about a fire, and all that going into the groundwater. But I mean, I would imagine some of these old houses you'd worry about a fire, right? They're still coated in lead paint, right? You're talking about how many pounds of lead that are being volatilized during a fire, just put out into the environment, right? That's got to be a huge. I don't know how much of an issue that is for groundwater. You don't really hear about it, so maybe it's not. Anyway, that's just kind of a food for thought to being that it's early in the process.
Right, well, it certainly would be a possibility. On the other hand, we don't need a regulation to intervene in a case where an industry, a light industry is doing or threatening to do harm to the environment. We can take action on that, right? Because we can regulate nuisances and noisome trades, they call it. And so I don't think that we would require a regulation to do that.
Now, when you talk about what is that? You just said the
Nuisances and noisome trades.
noisome trades.
Right.
Now, what is noisome?
That language goes back to when boards of health were first started in the colonial period, and I think it had to do with mostly the things like tanneries, things that were dirty and smelly and possibly polluting and possibly dangerous. Using mercury for hats and that kind of thing. Those things would be noisome trades. And now things that create pollution or create filth or runoff or something like that, that would be under the noisome trades, I think.
And under the current, legal environment, you don't need a local regulation on that, but at what point
I don't think we do.
So at what point does the Board of Health intervene? Is it during the application process, you know, when something like that is you know, burgeoning, or if something gets set up and then the Board of Health learns about it after the fact, does that come into play? How does that work?
Well, I think it could come into play in either way, but we haven't had this experience yet.
Okay.
Right, so we don't really know.
I think that would be important to get a better understanding of how
For sure.
Board of Health comes into play with Noisome?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. I think Tom had his hand up first, and then Keith. Go ahead, Tom.
Thanks. So just wrote down 3 things. I was going to start with 1, but the other 2 will be quick. Yeah, just for noisome, I think it, like Catherine said, it tends to mean smelly originally, but it's more related to the word annoy than it is to the word noise. It's kind of, it sounds like a word, it doesn't necessarily mean. And another point I just wanted to make is that the town of Buckland has a Board of Health regulation of environmental impact that kind of makes sort of a home rule type of statement about the noisome trade and nuisance aspect of boards of health, which might be helpful to look at. They haven't actually used it or enforced it for any reason. I think it came into effect in 2016. But at least since 2021, their Board of Health chair told me they haven't had opportunity to use it for anything yet. It does, in its preamble, quote one of the articles of the Massachusetts Constitution. I forget if it's 94 or 97, which gives it a little different or more power than just invoking the Mass General laws that apply to boards of health. So it can be a good model for strong Board of Health regulation. And then to Nathan, what you were just asking about in terms of what about a non-specific use-oriented regulation? Wendell is in the process of submitting to the Department of Environmental Protection, and I think the Board of Health in Shutesbury already knows this, an aquifer protection regulation, which is also a groundwater protection regulation. And it has BESS, or the battery energy storage facilities, as part of prohibited uses in the defined aquifer protection area, as well as things like auto junkyards, oil processing facilities. So it could be, or that sort of thinking could be a model for taking it from the perspective or the framework of the water, the groundwater, and not from the actual use, whether it be a data center or BESS. So Wendell is kind of really covering a lot of bases, or trying to, and other towns are as well. I just haven't in like Buckland, in terms of going at it from the water or from the specific use that you're thinking.
Thank you, Tom. That's a good scoop. Keith, go ahead.
I'm going to bounce back to the, and again, not to get too into Board of Health's duties, this noisome, regulating noisome businesses or industries. And I guess, I think Nathan asked, has it been, this seems like such a powerful tool that you would think communities have used that a lot. Their boards of health have used that a lot. Are there any indications? I know Mr. Hugo cited a 1931 instance of a hammer mill in a neighborhood, an industrial hammer mill. And I just wondered if there was anything more recent supporting this idea of regulating noisome businesses.
I couldn't tell you.
There was a case, I forget if it was Northfield or Bernardston, of a piggery that was determined to be a noisome instance. They were trying to, I think his name is Charlie Kanicki, He was
Mhm.
talking about it at a recent MAHB conference. And they were trying, the landowner, the operator of the piggery was trying to get an agricultural exemption. And they were not allowed to in the end because the way it was being done was too noisome. And so the Board of Health was able to say, no, this doesn't count as an agricultural use of the land. They showed us photos during the demonstration or the presentation, trees growing out of junked cars and pigs and pig stuff getting too close to the road and people and whatnot. So there are more modern examples of it being
Tom, thank you for giving me a new word to my vocabulary. I've never heard the word piggery before.
Yeah, it's a good word.
Right.
I finally
Noisome.
got to use it since I learned it.
Yeah, I've got noisome and piggery now, so.
Like,
I'm
it's
sorry,
a-
how do you spell noisome?
NOI for the NOI part, and then some, SOME, kind of like, winsome or cheersome or other
Okay.
subwords.
Having an extremely offensive smell or disagreeable, unpleasant. Okay, yeah. All right, so how do we feel right now at this point in our maybe it would be good for I understand the Board of Health met on the October 22nd, right? The same time we did. And these regulations were on your agenda for that meeting. Is that true?
That is true, and we haven't had a really substantive meeting on it yet. I mean, we're still getting educated on this. That's part of the reason why we wanted to come tonight, just sort of hear more from you, because you're much more savvy about these things than we are.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that once we get some things in writing, which we intend to do possibly by our next meeting, or at least by the first meeting in December, then we would like to meet with you, possibly the two whole boards together, and just look at what we've come up with and get your impressions and suggestions.
Okay. Yeah. Michael?
Can I suggest that we skip over minutes and go straight to the data center discussions, since we have everyone here, we're sort of focused on this, and then we can come back to minutes, since I'm sure anyone who's not part of the planning board doesn't care about.
Yeah, no, that's fair, yeah. Okay, so are we kind of feeling like we're ready to wrap this up and move on to the data center bylaw discussion then, or? So we've got Board of Health is going to meet later in November.
November 19th.
And
Yeah.
and that, you may have some written materials for that. And then if you do, maybe your next meeting or sometime after your next meeting in November, we'll be interested in setting up a joint session for the two boards.
Once we have something written, even if it's a fairly rough draft, we'll circulate it to you so that you can see it in advance. And then you and I can figure out a meeting time that's convenient for everyone.
Okay.
And
Yeah. All right.
if we go over the data center draft now, I mean, if you all are here and listening, I think both you can get a sense of what we're thinking about and probably contribute as well.
Yes, I mean to stay on and just listen to you talk about it.
Okay.
Arlene,
Yeah,
you
no,
muted.
this is,
I need to leave for another commitment, but Kat will represent us. So thanks.
thank you, Arlene. All right, I think, yeah, that's good enough for me. We'll move on to we'll change the agenda around, do the data center bylaw next.
You want me to share what we all looked at?
Yeah, sure, that'd be great.
Okay. Oh, Mateo, can you let me share?
Yep, I just turned it on.
Great, thanks. Okay, you guys see that?
Yes.
Cool, okay. So I sent it around I think it was last week. And the Board of Health got copies as well, like we discussed. So, I think what I would suggest, not to make it that I'm driving the conversation, but there's definitely points of discussion, which are like big substantive kind of things we should work through that are in the green, or in some cases I just highlighted yellow. And then if there's things in between that people want to talk about, maybe we can address those. Does that work for folks? So the first thing was the use table. And we told town meeting we were going to redo the use table. There's the use table and the definitions are tied. And so the way I approached it this time, based on the last conversation, was looking at size. And so, there's some, like, Steve had pointed out that, small or under 5,000 square feet. So that was sort of where the definition 5,000 feet and under, with the exception of the localized, which was a new one. And I was trying to capture, what we talked about, that Gail Hunters pointed out about the MLP, or we talked about as potentially the school, so I think the definition, if I scroll down here to localized, I put it in 100 square feet or less, or within an existing structure of the same size. So it's either outside. I think we can discuss the 100 square feet, but I was imagining sort of the hut behind town hall. I'm not sure what that is, but something that's sort of that size. And I'm assuming that any computers that are in the school are going to be about that size as well. So the idea was to sort of have something that, if it was that small, it would just be site plan review by the planning board. So that we were making sure that all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed. But the thing about site plan review, it's not discretionary. So if you do all the things that we say it's supposed to do, then you get it. And so that was a nod towards those kind of very small ones that we know is there. And then the highlight, the reason, and again, all this is open for discussion, but the reason I created a definition about public interest data centers is that in the use table, we have under community use and municipal use, which is by right. And so what I wanted to clarify was, like, just say the MLP decided that they were going to build a new data center next to the existing hut, that it wouldn't be by right because it's municipal use, or the school would do it, that they still had to sort of follow the rules. So the idea is to sort of create a category that is in effect a municipal or public benefit use, but having to follow the data center rules. So that was sort of the idea. And then the next one is small, which, I just mentioned, I think based on the last conversation, was 5,000 square feet or less. And then, medium large, it's sort of a weird title, but there's medium ones and there's large ones, but they're all bigger than 5,000 square feet. So that was sort of the differentiator. And what I took away from our conversation last time was we didn't want those, but with the small ones, you could do it by special permit. And then just go through and figure out what their parameters were. So I guess, do people have thoughts about any of that? Keith, I guess I'm running this because I can't see.
Yeah. Hey, just.
Oh, there he is. There's Nathan. Okay.
Oh, sorry. The 5,000 square feet, I know, we kind of based that on, I know we were talking about the library at the time, but then somewhere in the bylaw is a reference to buildings no bigger than 10,000 square feet. I forget exactly what the language was in the bylaw. And I wondered if we needed to somehow square so to speak, the difference
The
between
10,000 is
5,000
in our, is in our zoning bylaw?
Yeah, somewhere in there
Oh.
around the use tables or somewhere, it talks about tables or buildings other than residential being less than 10,000 feet or something like that.
Got it. Okay. Uh, Thank you. I'll check that out. Unless someone knows. Steve, do you know? Or Nathan? Okay.
I don't.
I mean, he's right, it's in there. I think it's just under dimensional requirements. Um,
But if we're making this specific to data centers, I think we can make it any size we want. We don't have to conform to the 10,000 square foot.
Yeah, but I thought maybe we would want to articulate some reason for that.
Well, I guess you mentioned this in a previous meeting, Keith, and it has to do with scale. And Shutesbury, for me, 5,000 square feet seems reasonable. But that's just to me.
Well, then maybe we should revisit that reference to 10,000 feet that's in there elsewhere.
And Keith, to clarify, you're not saying one or the other. You're just saying there's two different data points.
Yeah,
They should be coordinated.
exactly. Yeah, I'm just saying there's an inconsistency in the bylaw.
Okay. I will pick that up and see if I can propose something for next discussion. If people have ideas, just shoot it to me. Anything else in terms of like this, the special permit versus the site plan review versus the not allowed? Is that feeling right? Nathan, do you want to do picking people? It's your
no,
meeting.
I mean, yeah, well, I was just gonna say, I think, I would hesitate to change the, municipal use allowed by right over, this. I think, I don't know, if the MLP wants to build another, a bigger routing house or hut behind town hall, I don't know if I want to make them come before the planning board to get a special permit for that, or to do a site plan review for that.
Yeah, but if it's, just say it's a big one, or just say it's a really noisy one, it's municipal
Yeah.
use, they could do whatever they want. And that's not what we're asking, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about parameters by size.
I mean, if we're concerned about water and these other things, I don't know why the town should be exempt.
Well, I think generally the idea is that the town is doing things that are in the interest of is in the interest in town, and they're not gonna. The town's not gonna say, "Oh, we should do. We should make a facility that's gonna use 500,000 gallons of water a day. That's what we should do."
I
Yep.
don't know, those MLP people. Hey,
Yeah.
Tom's got his hand up.
Yeah. Well, so and I mean even the broader localized thing is I mean. If it's accessory, if it's within an existing building, it's that requirement just seems overly broad, you know. Depending on what the definition of the definition of a data center we have, which is what, just like server racks and computers that process data. I know I should see it, but it's if there was a already permitted commercial building and they want to put in a server room, I mean, they got to come back and do a site plan review to put in a server room in their building. Is that what that means?
Well, I think what I was trying to think of is we're working through things that we want and don't want, and we think fit or don't fit in Shutesbury. And so the only way you can do it in a non-discretionary way, aside from saying just do what you want and we can't say no, is to do a site plan review. So, you could say it's by right if it's small, but small doesn't necessarily mean good. I mean, you could have some aspect that we decide is really not okay. Or really, you could have a really noisy gas generator going 24/7 right up to the dimensional lines. And the way the building is constructed, maybe neighbors hear that's by right if you don't put anything in. So I think, what what you had wanted was, to not get in the way of some things. And I think if we can come up with qualities that we want in data centers, the message is if you're small, you just have to meet the needs. And maybe we build in some other things that small ones don't have to do. So like there's applicability, so you can say, just say the water use, the sound report. I mean, I think you'd still want to have a sound report, but hypothetically, one could say, sound reports are not required for localized data centers, but they are required for small. So we can differentiate on some of the requirements if we think they're too burdensome. But it seems like going through the whole process of figuring out what works for town and what doesn't work for town, and then doing by right, throws that conversation out the window if it's really small. But that's just my 2 cents. That's
Yeah, I mean, I think, generally speaking, if it's really small, it's not really, the things that the town is concerned, we're concerned about. But obviously, yeah, there could be exceptions to that, but yeah, all right, well, let's move on. Tom, you got your hand up?
Thanks. Yeah, I was also confused about the defining of the public interest one and then saying that they're not a municipal use when actually municipal is contained in the definition as an example, like the Shutesbury Municipal Light Plant. So, or Shutesbury Municipal Government. I just wondered if that would even like pass certain definition muster. It did make me ask the question as well. It wasn't clear to me. So this is saying that essentially data centers that are in the municipal interest wouldn't be exempt as municipal use. Is that correct?
that was the idea, that there'd be
Okay.
some parameters. Yeah.
So I wondered why it was even being defined if it was only going to be quashed as like, it brought up more questions than answers for me, especially because I don't see how they're not a municipal use when the definition includes that they're municipal. Just wanted to bring it up. I'm not arguing for or against whether they should be exempt or not under municipal use, but just the way it's presented here, it's very confusing to me to see, is it or isn't a municipal use? Very briefly, under the first data center definition, could just make a note of it where it says a principal use, and is either
Right.
what's the word
Got it.
principal? Just make sure
Yep.
it's principal there. And then I think you get at it, or it's gotten at in the dimensional table part 4.2.1. But I just wanted to make sure we're talking about footprints, but are we talking about height restrictions as well? I mean, 100 square feet at 1 story is a lot different from 2 stories or 3 stories. And I didn't know if there might be other ways also to define the size beyond just the footprint in terms of height or capacity or another data point or measuring point. I mean, in terms of how big is it? I don't know if that comes to play even with data centers, if they can be very tall or not by nature.
Keith had mentioned capacity as an idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think height does, I mean, I've seen some of the big ones that they are like 4 or 5 stories tall. But no, I think, again, back to the dimensional thing with the 10,000 foot, I think somewhere in there is also a height, just a general building height limit in town.
Yeah. there is.
Yeah, so I think that brings up a good point of maybe aligning it in the whole zoning bylaws instead of just having its own separateness, because unless we do add some height restrictions here or something, if you did stick with the 5,000 and if that isn't in agreement with the 10,000 square foot mentioned later in the bylaws.
Yeah, the maximum height is in the dimensional table, and it's 35 feet for everything except Lake Willow, and that's 28.
Okay.
But my
Those are just
assumption,
some of the things I noticed, but made me have some questions.
should we want to move to the next green area, or should we, is there more to talk about for this, right? I don't think it's.
Oh, yeah, let's move on to the next one now.
Okay, I think it segues. Oh, well, let's go to dimensions, then I'll backtrack to that other one. Because, so dimensional requirements, there's a couple of things. There's lot size. So right now, every lot in town, well, rural residential, town center, and Lake Wyola have to be 90,000 square feet, so a little over 2 acres. FC is variable, where there's no minimum. So that's something that I caught for myself after I sent it out to you. So that's sort of, if it went into FC, we want to have a minimum in there, and what would the minimum be? And then for the setbacks, we had different setbacks for solar. There's ones in the dimensional table, but the side setbacks are at maximum 25 feet. So it seems like we might want to rethink those. I just threw these in here as, we had talked, people had talked about noise. And so one way to deal with noise is not only to make sure that the noise doesn't go beyond the property line of the data center, but also that you would have the setbacks so that the actual physical entity was sort of set back within the parcel. But, and to Tom's point, we could, if we wanted to do something different from the normal height of 35 and 28, we could do something here as well. So I don't know, do people have thoughts about how this hits you?
Um,
Steve?
So just thinking out loud here, keep in mind that in the forest district, the challenge is the larger the piece of property. Remember, the forest district is supposed to be set up to minimize fragmentation, right? That was the original intent of the planning board. And so I think our challenge is, how do we define a lot size if we're going to allow it in the forest district that allows for noise? I don't have the answer. I only have the question. Okay. That allows for noise, but is big enough, but not too big. If you follow my question. And if you don't, please feel free to tell me you're completely puzzled. I'll try again.
I'll put Goldilocks in the dimensional table. Is that it?
Yeah, basically, yes. For the specifically for the forest district. Yeah. Yeah, that you got it, Michael.
I mean, we could have just across the board, the way that sort of getting to like what Tom and Keith were talking about, where we're referring to other parts of the zoning bylaw. What I was thinking here was that we would just refer to section 4.2-1, which is the dimensional table about the minimum lot size. But we could then write in something for the FC in particular, since there's no minimum. We could just say it's 90,000 square feet for all 4 districts, if that's what we wanted to do. And the lot size separate from the setbacks. I mean, the minimum setback, just because I'm staring at the minimum front yard setback for rural residential and the FC is 75, and for town center and Lake Wyola it's 20. So it seemed like the bigger one, it's already a standard, but going for the bigger one made sense. And then the side and rear, it's 25 for rural residential and FC. It's 20 for town center, it's 15 for Lake Wyola. And so, based on the previous conversations about, trying to keep these back a little bit, it seemed like having it be bigger than what we currently have. And I forget what we have in the solar. But it's at least 50, if not 75 for the solar.
On this, 20,000 square foot is the maximum floor area for non-residential structures.
Say that again?
20,000 square feet is the maximum floor area for non-residential structures.
Yeah, this is where Keith found it right there.
Yeah, no, I know, but
Yeah,
I think we said 10,000 earlier, but it's 20,000.
Well, that's
In
only in
Forest House,
FC. Yeah, in FC.
Let's see, yeah,
That's 10,000 for the others.
right. Mhm.
But I think what's worth noting is like when this happened, light industry was sort of a concept. You know, we didn't have Wheelock, we didn't have BESS on the horizon, we didn't have solar, we didn't have data centers. So my sense is this was created with good intent, but not any practical application. So I think we're at a different chapter in our history.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Well, I mean, if people don't have major objections, since we're going to review this like month after month, I could keep this and you guys can
Yeah.
sort of think it. And then I could just sort of highlight the other stuff. And if there's strong things, I can capture it. And if not, we can sort of at least have mentioned it. So the next one is siting requirements. You know, there's two ways to go. One is to say, you know, that which is the first line, that you can have data centers on contiguous lots, you know, so you just wouldn't have a whole bunch of them in a row. The other way to think about it is that you can have them on a single lot, but they just have to be compliant. You know, and so like that second thing about the polygon was if you had three of them, you'd have to draw some shape around the three and figure out, is it a small one or is it a medium large one? If it became a medium large one, it'd be prohibited. Here's the way I was thinking about it. So you can't just take lots of small ones and bump them together and, you know, fill up the lot. So I think either way is worth discussing. I don't know if you have strong feelings about them. And it's sort of like the same thing Steve was talking about, like, you know, do you want to bunch them? Do you want to not bunch them? Like spread them across town? You know, like the solar thing, even though we got sued for it, the idea was spread them across town so we didn't have a solar ghetto. You know, you don't want to have a data center ghetto in town either. So it's another way to think about it.
Well, with the solar, we had no choice. It was, as you said, it was legal. Having one per district of the 9 districts that we had identified didn't pass muster, but we're not faced with the same situation here with the data centers.
Right. Yeah. We're not creating any areas here. So right now it could be a developer who could say, you know, I want to put them all, you know, on Town Farm Road, you know, and then Town Farm Road would become Data Center Road, if we so desired. But other ways they can just pick and choose wherever in town.
Town Farm Road, huh?
I just made up. I wanted something that was short.
Did we get, I'm trying to think back, some sort of bind of like limiting industry X to 1 per district or 1 per unit, that we couldn't do that because
Yes.
you're limiting other landowners' use of their property potentially, or something like that?
Yeah, I would say I'm confused by that, you know, so what was conveyed to us, there's a term for it, but basically you have to treat all the town the same.
Uniformity across districts.
Yes. But what confuses me, and maybe Nathan, you can answer this, is like, if you have an overlay district, you know, like towns have an industrial overlay district, and, you know, and some towns even have a solar overlay district, which is what the state's proposing. You're doing that. You're treating it differently. So I don't know how you like align those two concepts. They seem like they're in contradiction to each other.
Well, I think an overlay district is another way of saying it's a separate district. So if you have, say we have our rural residential district, which is along all the roadways in town, 200 feet from the road. And we could put an overlay district on one of those roads where you allow manufactured housing or, trailers. And
But
then,
then aren't you treating that district different than the rest of town?
but there's not an issue of uniformity among districts because you have an overlay district that delegates where that is allowed within the rural residential district, or it could, I don't know a lot about overlay districts, but I mean, I think it solves the problem of uniformity across districts because it's defined within the construct of an overlay district. But if you don't have that kind of thing, right? If you're saying, okay, you can only have one per district, it's like, okay, well, it's allowed on lot A, but not allowed on lot B because it's already on lot A, and that creates, non-uniformity. It's just, it's a,
That makes sense. You can
Yeah,
stop there.
yeah. I mean, I think that's it, I don't know if there's anything more to it, but Jeff.
Part of my memory of the issue with the 7 districts was that we didn't include the map when it was sent to the Attorney General. So because the map wasn't there, I think they rejected the whole thing. That's my memory, but that was a while ago.
That was definitely the case, but it's different from one of the things that Keith said they were objecting to. They whacked us in different ways.
Mhm.
So, Jeff, to your point, yeah, they're not overlay districts. What do we call them in our zoning bylaw?
Oh, I don't know, solar, I don't know what we call them. They don't exist, so it doesn't matter anymore.
Well, I mean, they do exist. Our bylaw is still in effect. So our solar bylaw passed in 2020.
That's right, it's still there, you're right, right.
And that had the map with the
Yeah.
different areas where you said you can only make one per each of these areas.
I think
Yeah,
they
the
were
Attorney
solar,
General
I think
passed
they were solar districts, what they were
Solar
called.
districts.
Mhm.
So that's so yeah, there may be constitutional issues with that, or at least zoning act issues with that, based on the uniformity of districts clause, right, in the zoning act probably. But if we had attempted to amend the solar bylaw to put a bunch of changes into it, and the wording on the warrant, or said we're going to replace the solar bylaw with this, and what we replaced it with mentioned the map, but we did not include the old map in the new amendment that replaced the bylaw. So they said it was misleading. Yeah, anyway, that's neither here nor there. But those same provisions are already in our bylaw from 2020. Just to make sure that's crystal clear. Okay.
So with the siting thing, I think the idea is, do we wanna limit how many are close together? On one lot or on abutting lots? Does that matter to people?
Michael, I think you can say you cannot do more than one facility on the same lot. I don't think you can say that you can build one on one lot and not do another one on a contiguous lot, because that would violate the uniformity clause. I think that's what we just figured out.
Okay, so only one per.
But to give you comfort, I don't think we'll get a data center unless we go out and ask the world for one. So, put out a request for proposal or something.
I might have to sweeten the pot more than that.
Yeah, something.
Ashley, were you gonna say something?
Well, I think Nathan pretty much just addressed what I was gonna say. Like, it doesn't matter. I guess I had a little concern. I can't really articulate why, just an instinct that felt not great about saying you can't build 2. But on the one hand, I like the idea of saying you can't build 20, but 2 maybe doesn't seem that bad. Maybe it makes it more financially feasible for whoever it is that wants to do this development, so long as they can prove that they're not going to take too much water and that they're not going to destroy Shutesbury or any of the people living here or whatever. Maybe 2 would be nice, but I don't think really 5 or certainly not 10 feel great. So I don't know if there's language we could put in there along those lines. And that's just my thoughts.
I mean, practically speaking, if, given this polygon idea, that if you had 2 and they were going to be under 5,000 square feet, they'd be pretty teeny. They'd be like 2,500 and 2,500. So I don't know commercially if someone would want to do that on a lot, but that would maybe what it would look like, because anything over 5,000 then becomes prohibited. If we kept the use table the way we designed it or discussed it before, which is also open to change. But so practically speaking, we probably, if we kept this second point where each one has to, stay within the sum of the square footage, it would probably preclude more than 1. Is my hunch. Go, Steve.
We could always treat data centers like liquor licenses. There's a limited number of liquor licenses, limited number of data centers across the town.
There are provisions of state law that provide for liquor licenses.
It's okay though, but the town has the power to do that. I mean, the analogy is maybe not perfect, but the point is we could limit the total number if we so chose. I want to remind everybody, we don't have to adhere to reasonably regulate here, like the state statute for solar.
Right.
We can require these data centers on Shutesbury's terms, not the state's terms.
Yeah, it's a different animal than the solar regulations.
Right.
I'm going to throw this out there, not to like throw a wrench in things, but since we're talking about lot size, what if, let's say an edge data center, 5,000 square feet, meets all our regulations, et cetera, comes in and says, we'd actually like to power it with solar. Because that's a thing. I imagine it would take some acreage for them to be able to do that. I know that this is from like a 10-minute internet cast a net, see what's out there. Like, are data centers using solar for power? And sure enough, they are. The big ones are going off site and connecting to giant industrial solar fields that actually could provide enough. But then it looks like a lot of them have solar panels on the roofs, or the smaller scale ones. It's obviously the more local issue for us is water, but looking at this from a standpoint of we're doing this, perhaps we could encourage greener data centers as far as their energy use. And anyways, it's something that I've been thinking about. Like, what if one came in and it met all of our stipulations and they wanted to power it with solar?
It's a good point. I mean, I think if we did that, we would approach it as the data center is the primary use and solar is the accessory use.
Mm-hmm.
I think just how we would think about it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember where it is in there, like which. There's several different Shutesbury, I don't know, bylaws, statutes, what the right word is that we were referencing or that you referenced in here. And when we get to it, we can talk about it. But I wondered if our solar bylaw should be in there as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely, if you find examples, but I'll see about weaving that in. I think it's a great point. I'll move us along, just going back up to here.
Can I ask one thing about sliding?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Thanks. So the polygon encompassing all of the data centers on one site, theoretically, if there's more than one. Why choose that measurement as opposed to just the sum of the square footage of the different data centers on the site?
We could do that.
And
I was,
be any consideration about setbacks between data centers on one site? Or not? Just again, a question more than I have an answer to, but I thought other parts of the zoning bylaw maintained like a certain distance from, or a maximum distance from, or a minimum distance from different structures on the same site.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to address that.
well, in light of the fire in Amherst, it's a good thing since I heard
Mhm.
concerns about just that.
What about what's the, the thing that Jeff put together about the rural siting or the basically condensing residential use into, what do they
Open
call
space
it?
design, open
Yeah,
space
yeah.
design.
Is there any way to incorporate that to keep these things kind of from sprawling out in a forest conservation area?
I definitely, I mean, I think that's sort of like was the idea that we want to clump them.
Yeah,
And then, if we clump them, what does that mean in terms of the sum of them? Like, I just threw out that it would have to fit into the small versus medium large, but maybe you get, just like open space, you get benefits for, consolidating. You get benefits for putting multiple ones on a parcel. It gets back to sort of what we want to see and what we're worried about, but like it's interesting.
So, I think that, as far as subdivisions go, there are, commercial subdivisions, right?
I
It's
don't
been a
know.
while. I mean, so I think, open space design essentially is a process that allows subdivisions to circumvent some of the requirements in our bylaw pertaining to lot size for residential dwellings. And, with one notable exception, it generally ties into subdivisions or shared driveways.
Yeah, I
So-
think it's more accurate, Nathan, to talk about shared driveway than getting, we're not that the open space development really isn't a workaround for subdivision. That's a whole nother set of requirements and needs. But
Not a workaround.
it just allows more flexible lot size and grouping of them to preserve open space.
Right, right. No, allows you to circumvent requirements for lot size is what I said, yeah. But it's,
Was trying
there's
to
a
sprawl.
requirement that subdivisions in the Forest Conservation District must be done with open space design, right? I don't know, I think it,
Not necessarily. In other words, if somebody was able to meet in the forest district all of our requirements for a true subdivision, which are not insignificant in our bylaws, they could do a subdivision, but it would be cost prohibitive.
okay.
Or let's just say cost dissuasive.
This is sort of something that, might pique Kat's interest. So, this is how do we deal with storage and backup? And, I ran the draft past Keith because he was interested in, so some of these ideas are things that Keith put out that I mentioned before, like, limiting it to the capacity of, battery capacity, for example. The diesel and NiCad batteries are not great either. I'm just working up from the bottom. The document that Keith sent out earlier about the different kinds of lithium batteries. Do we want to focus on particular technologies? That sort of, it works for now, it might not work for later, but we can always figure out how to word that. Do we want to prohibit or allow, lithium ion batteries based on chemistry. Propane and lead, Steve had mentioned this meeting and I think last. So like this, the only thing I'll say, I reached out to Donna with a very small question about lithium-ion batteries, because, if we do it, however we end up, she's gonna have to look at it just to make sure that, since the SJC since the appeals court affirmed that energy storage systems are part of solar, how you describe energy storage systems is important. So I think, the way I'm approaching it is that we're looking at technologies and not calling them, so electrical storage and backup systems, with certain technologies is probably okay. But we're gonna have to, when we decide what we want to do, we just have to be careful and run it by Donna how we describe it. But I think we probably have lots of differing ideas about this particular section. So, anyone want to jump in? Keith.
So I've been deep into NFPA 855 and NFPA 1 for my own reasons, and the Mass Fire Code. And they seem to be pretty up to speed on differentiating between the different as more is learned on the different battery chemistries, that their guidance or regs are following along and specifying different spacings or containers or whatever, depending on battery chemistry. So I'm not sure that and I think from my reading, it seems like a lot of these, that even the automobile industry is shifting towards the lithium iron phosphate batteries as opposed to the ones that have the nickel and the cadmium, the more exotic ones that they're trying to squeeze every watt out of, that tend to be a little bit less stable, I guess. But it did, and this goes to in general, Bess in general, and Michael, back to your concerns about fire and cooling capacity of our fire department and water availability. And one of the things that they specify in there is distance between containers. And the fact that we are in a rural area with limited, perhaps limited water, that perhaps we could say, instead of the standard recommended distance between containers, containers have to be limited to such and such capacity, half a megawatt per container, and the containers must be spaced twice the distance as required by NFPA 855, so that there's less water needed to keep them cool, to prevent runaway from moving through a facility.
Can I interject for a second?
Yeah.
Just so everyone's on the same page and no one has to feel like they should know this. The NFPA is the National Fire Prevention Association. So they're the national association that sort of looks at fire risks and recommends codes that then, like, if not all the states, most states and municipalities adopt as these are the best practices. And 855 is particularly about energy storage systems. And it just got updated in the last couple of months. So the idea that, they're revising them every few years. So sorry to interrupt, Keith.
No, that's right. And Massachusetts adopts NFPA with some, they've tightened up on some stuff. But in general, Mass has adopted NFPA completely, or NFPA 1, which references NFPA 855. Anyway, so that dawned on me, is, something outside the box. That being a rural community, we could say, because we're concerned about fire, space the batteries farther apart. And we can talk about that if we think that might be a feasible ask. I'm really, this whole idea of trying to get away from fossil fuels, and even for a backup power supply, I think we should be discouraging the use of fossil fuel generators. They are not without their own costs.
I think the challenge for me, Keith, is balancing all of the mining and minerals that goes into these lithium ion batteries. There's a whole industry, destructive industry, and I can't weigh that against something like a propane tank, that's maybe is still fossil fuels. There's trade-offs. I don't know which is more harmful to the environment, but I wouldn't just assume that battery storage, lithium ion battery storage is the answer. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying from a environmental impact, I'm not sure how you balance those two, how they compare against each other.
Well, I was thinking more just locally and from a climate change perspective. And I don't think we want to go down the rabbit hole of, life cycle analysis for any technology. Pros and cons to everything.
Yeah. Jeff, you want to jump in?
I do, just for a minute. Keith, I appreciate you sending the articles. So I was looking at the first one that was written by the Fire and Risk Alliance, and I looked them up, and they're a for-profit company, and they wrote the for-profit company, and they wrote the article for the American Clean Power Association, which represents energy storage. So I think it's important to look at where these articles are coming from and where the money's coming from. Because if you look at the Audubon Society, they combined their research with the Thompson Lab of Harvard Forest, and they came up with different results. And the American Chemical Society analyzed the water released from, when water is used for putting out lithium batteries, and they come up with, the incredible, the toxicity of that water. So I think when we look at research, and I think we have to follow the money and see where, who's writing the article and why are they writing it, and are they making any money writing it? So I just want to throw that in.
I acknowledge that, where it came from. And it'd be great if you could point out where the flaws are or where you disagree with what their findings that they presented were.
I just want to say that it's hard for me to trust industries that are for profit, and when they're presenting something where they have an incentive to present whatever information they want to present, because they're making money, they're being paid by companies that want a particular thing.
Jeff, I have combed the literature. I welcome you combing the literature too, to find other scientific studies that pass muster.
Okay, I know I'm just saying that in general, not. I think it's important to see where the sources are, who's writing it, and who are they getting paid for writing this article.
I concur, and I know in the field of debate, there's a term for, is it ad hominem? Yeah, we recognize, maybe we don't like the source, but point out the flaws in the argument, not the source.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate the honest conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Tom?
Thanks. Yeah, definitely not for ad hominem attacks about sources of health information. I just wanted to mention that
Touche.
we shouldn't forget sodium iron pyrophosphate batteries, which are being researched. There's a pilot program in Denver for them, and there's also a technology of concrete batteries where the concrete is immersed in an electrolyte mixture and becomes usable as a battery, and it's very environmentally friendly. So I just want to make sure we don't forget that it's easy to focus on lithium just because of its prevalence and use right now, but there are examples of other energy storage systems that are much less flammable. Everything comes with pros and cons, but we might be able to work into the language that we end up with something acknowledging these other sources.
Thanks, Tom. Ashley?
So something that keeps coming up for me is how the technology, we can't anticipate everything that's going to come around. And it's really cool to hear those of you who have done research on batteries to hear what you have to say. I have done none of that research and know very little. And then, you've, like Michael, you've written bylaws before and this board has passed them. So I'm just wondering about, is it possible to find a middle ground, to keep it open and say, as far as electrical storage and backup, or however these things are going to be powered, that we need to make sure that they don't violate the noise bylaw, that they're not, what is that word, noisome,
Yes.
or whatever. Do we need to be this specific, and is it a pitfall for us to be this specific? Is it possible that we're backing ourselves into a corner? Again, keeping in mind that it's not super likely that any of these are going to come to Shutesbury, though it's quite possible. I don't know, just something to consider, just as a person who really doesn't know much about these different battery systems. But obviously, I want to protect our community from these terrible fires. And then, I'm thinking about the Olympia Place fire over the weekend and all of the exploding propane tanks and how that contributed to a bigger fire as well. But I understand that's a different animal than these batteries, but there it is.
Yeah. So I just want to follow up on that. The reason I scrolled up to the cooling section was originally I wrote in the draft before I sent it out, I sort of did what you were talking about, Ashley, or identified things that we were supporting. And then Keith wrote back and sort of turned it on its head and said, let's talk about things that are not allowed. Because you can sort of come at it from saying, and someone said this earlier, like, what do we want to achieve out of this? So what are the things we want to protect? So just looking at that first bullet, you shall not withdraw groundwater or surface water for cooling purposes. So that says you can't do this, but if you do it anyway that doesn't do that, you're good. So we don't have to be predictive about what the technology is. And I thought that was it sort of creates this bar where we're very explicit about what we don't want. And so there might be a way of doing this in a similar way, so like the issues, say, about lithium ion batteries, well, we might disagree about the risk of fire, or we might say, you can't use a technology or a construction design that would be prone to, fires. However one writes that, because I think that's a little vague, but, we could do that. Depending on how we feel about fossil fuels, one could say, I don't know what one could say, but like just flipping it around, and I mean, I do think when Keith recommended it to me, what it sort of did is opened up the universe of possibility by saying what you can't do, but you can do everything else you can think of now and tomorrow. So.
I think it's also safe to say when you're generating electricity, as much as we want to say it's possible, none of it's clean, just like what's in these batteries, the fossil fuels burning, the waste from the solar panels 25 years down the line, like it's ugly. And so just thinking about the least evil method and keeping the possibilities open for technologies that we don't even know about that are going to come around to something to keep in mind.
Small modular reactors, is that what I heard?
People are working on it, right? I mean, my gosh.
So
Oh, you're talking to the nuclear proponent over here.
we might consider, we can't consider this, but keep in mind that the backup, whatever the backup power source is, only kicks in, right, when the main source of energy fails from some power outage. And maybe we come up after some research with a decibel level that the backup system can't exceed. We can't do that. The Board of Health has to do that. But we could suggest the Board of Health do that.
Just to push back, so like, a lithium ion battery, whatever the technology, won't make noise. So that
No,
gives
but
that.
they have to be cooled. You know, these things generate heat, and somehow even the battery energy storage systems have to maintain a certain temperature. They can't get, you know, they can't just build up with heat in whatever their storage
Right.
I think what Michael's saying, Steve, is that you're not gonna have noise complaints from lithium ion batteries.
Yeah, I mean, you might have fans, but I don't know that it's gonna be anything that would
I mean, I think
violate our current noise bylaw.
the cooling system for the actual processing units is what's gonna be creating noise, I think. Yeah, and also backup generation for diesel fuel. Another thing to keep in mind with some of this stuff, you know, I think is that you know, there may be some use cases in the data center world where you may require both some batteries and also some generation. I think that the batteries can be used for kind of ensuring seamless power supply. And then, you know, managing a train, like if there's a blackout, you know, there's a latency from when that happens to when the generators can actually kick on. And a battery may be used to cover that latency period. Just something to keep in mind that there may be both.
Is it safe to say this is one of our tougher problems in terms of how we design this?
So far.
Well,
Yeah.
as Ashley said, it's probably all academic anyway, so.
Are we going through this whole thing tonight just out of curiosity or?
Hey, you
Well,
know, it's yeah, it's getting late.
I just want to highlight there's only one more thing that
Michael, before you move on, you
Yeah.
know, I was just looking at that, you know, not use any water for cooling. I was wondering if we might consider limiting water use to you know, something like what we might see as like the maximum size of a residential building in town. And I know we allow two-family houses. It has to be it's a larger lot size requirement, right? 90,000 square feet instead of 45,000 square feet. And then yeah, I was looking at the Board of Health regulations for wells, and it talks about, you know, the recharge capability.
Nathan, I think if we go back to the marijuana facility, again,
Oh, yeah.
the language I used there talked about,
Okay.
you know, whatever you do, it can't impact the groundwater
Yeah.
that your neighbors are affected or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I found it. No, I will say, having written it, it's and forgotten about it, it sounds pretty good.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, take me half a second to find it, but it was, let's see.
Well, you know, I think, you know, it is getting late, but
Okay,
you know, reminding me of that satisfies me. You know, I think it's something we should consider is you know, you know, obviously we're all in agreement about not wanting to screw up the aquifer, but if you know, if there's some water used for cooling that doesn't do that, then, you know, that's fine. If we ever get an application for this, just, you know, I think that's a reasonable thing to do, rather than just banning water outright.
Well, I thought, Michael, you put in closed systems for water only didn't you? Or mistake?
Well, that's why I said it.
yeah, I didn't use the word closed loop, but it was basically, that was the idea, and I think Kat had mentioned closed loop.
Yeah.
I think there was one other thing I just wanted to highlight,
Yeah.
even if we don't discuss it, just to mention it. And I could be wrong. Sorry if I'm getting everybody nauseous. Oh yeah, this is a small point, I realize this after the fact, but some of the stuff I was looking at the solar bylaw and figuring out, what might be appropriate, what might not be. And so there's the whole discontinued operations, which often is not thought about. It's like the afterthought for the for the afterlife of these things. So I added in here, if it's no longer functioning as intended, it shall be removed or sold to another party. But something just for us to ponder is that unlike a wind turbine or solar, installation or something, most likely this is going to be a building, with stuff in it. And so if they say, oh, we can't make a buck, we're leaving Shutesbury, and they leave the building, maybe, it's just like a house that's getting abandoned. It's not a good thing, but maybe they don't have to remove it. So I think this is a thing that we could maybe reconsider as we're thinking about this. Not great to have empty industrial buildings, or what I'm assuming is sort of like this concrete brick box. But making them take it away, I don't know if that makes sense. So,
We could
but
give
I
them
was,
a liquor license and turn it into a club.
The AC, the new AC.
it's right.
Actually, that's always aggravated me, Michael, when a big box store closes or a mall and it just sits there abandoned. And I'm like, why can't they make them like put money in escrow or something to, if they disappear, there's money available to remove.
Yeah. Do you like the idea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
We have
I-
that for solar,
No, I
for
know.
Well, if somebody owns the building and they're renting it to a retailer, and the retailer goes out of business, and now, the building owner says, well, I don't want to tear my building down. I'm
Yeah.
hoping to get some new tenants,
Well, you're allowed to do that. We're saying, I mean, we put it in that they could sell it to or as long as it's functioning. I think you don't want to have, zombie buildings.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, abandoned, structures are definitely something to consider. I agree with that. Hey, are we ready to move on, Mike? Because it is getting late.
Yeah.
Is that,
That was it.
that was, okay. All right, we have, minutes, all right, I think, do we want to maybe just do the 10:22 minutes tonight, or are people prepared to do, the other, minutes? Yeah, okay, yeah, let's just rock the minutes then. We'll start with, the more recent ones, from October 22nd. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes of October 22nd, 2025.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Now, I do have just a few, revisions that I did not do far enough in advance. I'll share my screen just to kind of make it easier. Okay. So in this paragraph, I just, amendments, I changed to revisions, and I just included the word draft in front of minutes. This is in the, review and improvement is from 9.8 section of the minutes there. Just thought amendments was a little bit, not quite the term we wanted there. And Murphy spoke as a voter and under the special town meeting recap section. And a portion of the discussion about the dissent and report to town meeting. When Steve was talking, he referred to the writing of the warrant, right? But I think we were talking about the writing of the planning board report to town meeting. But we did say warrant several times, right? And I just thought it would be good to kind of maybe put in brackets, planning board report here.
Yeah. No, you're right, Nathan. I did use that word mistakenly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but so this is just kind of giving, we all know what we were talking about.
Right.
So just add this in brackets, does that seem reasonable? Or maybe, or in some kind of, Bressler used the word warrant here, although we were talking about the planning board report to town meeting, if that would be better to even explain it more.
I'm fine with that. I think that makes it more accurate.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll just say,
Ugh.
okay. All right, so I'll be fine. Thank you. So wrapping up this section is a sentence. Murphy wonders how other that's well, yeah. I actually misread it. So I said Murphy wonders how the planning board will handle this or something like that, but
Oh.
that's actually fine. So I'll say more, he agrees that she should do some more research on this and consider a bylaw instead of, a bylaw or perhaps regulations. And I add that at the very least, the next time we go to town meeting and have decent dissent, we will be specific in our motions so that these questions are clear. All right, so that's like if we don't get a bylaw, we'll just try and be clear in our motions so there's no confusion. Yeah. And that's it. Does anyone else have any other revisions? Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just send this draft or these revisions to Mateo so he can incorporate them in the approved minutes.
I'll forget it. I'm watching Mateo edit while we speak, but forget it.
Oh, okay.
Let's get confused.
Oh, no, that was yeah, okay, yeah. All right, so I'll call the roll. Seifert,
Aye.
Hasty,
Aye.
Bressler,
Aye.
DeCara,
Aye.
Pycroft,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Very good. Okay, the board has approved the minutes from 10/22/2025. I will send those revisions we reviewed to Mateo, our land use clerk. All right, do we have January 8th, 2024? Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes for January 8th, 2024?
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Aye.
All right, Jeff Weston seconds. Any discussion?
Just this is the January 8th one.
Yes.
It says 2023 on the very top of the document.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I got really confused.
Okay. Well, that's a good catch.
And in the names of people present, my name is just misspelled. It's spelled IE, not EI, for others present. That's all I noticed.
Okay. Mateo, are you getting that?
Somebody did because it just got changed while I spoke.
Yeah, I'm correcting it.
Thank you. All right. Nice. Cool. Okay. Anything else? Okay, I'll call the roll. Seifert,
Is it okay that I do this because I wasn't yet even an associate member?
you can abstain.
Oh, I'll abstain.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Hasty,
I gotta confess, I haven't read them, so I'm gonna abstain also.
okay, Bressler,
Aye.
DeCara,
Aye.
Pycroft,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
and, yeah, I will, I'll say aye. All right, very good. The minutes from January 8th, 2024.
We just
Been
did those.
approved.
Yeah.
Okay, next we'll do the minutes from February 12th, 2024. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Okay, second.
I'll second again.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, any discussion?
Just one tiny thing. In the role of others present, it says 3 names and then it says, and all other unidentified individuals. I think the word all is not supposed to be there. Just other unidentified officials.
Sure, yeah.
That's all I need.
Okay, that's done. Anything else? All right, I'll call the roll. Seifert,
I'll abstain again. I wasn't yet on the board.
Hasty,
Same, abstain.
okay, Bressler,
Aye.
DeCara,
Aye.
Pycroft,
Aye.
Weston,
Aye.
and Lamar. Minutes from February 12th, 2024 are approved. And now the minutes from March 4th, 2024. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I hear a second.
Second.
Thank you. All right, so Michael DeCara moves, Jeff Weston seconds. Any discussion? No. All right, I'll call the roll. Seifert,
Aye.
Hasty,
Abstain.
Bressler,
Aye.
DeCara,
Aye.
Pycroft,
Aye.
Weston.
Aye.
All right, the minutes from motion carries. The minutes from March 4th, 2024 have been approved. Beautiful. Now we'll just
Did you vote on that one, Nathan?
I did.
I'm
I
sorry, I
said
didn't hear
I
it.
said all.
Pardon me.
No, thanks. Yeah, no, I voted in the affirmative.
Mhm.
Okay, so executive session minutes, basically we're gonna do it, and then I realized, basically last week that they had been shared with everyone. You may have seen an email from Mateo, right? So these documents have now been shared. The documents that are there are not necessarily an exhaustive list of all the executive sessions we had. Some are just the planning board and some are with the select board. We've got a list going offline. I've been chatting with Michael and Mateo a little bit. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna figure out which ones are the planning board only ones. And for our next meeting, there'll be an executive session on the agenda. And the board can enter into executive session and review and approve those minutes for the ones where it was just the planning board. Possibly decide to release them, make them public, right? So that will be the goal for the next executive session. The ones where they're in joint session, it's kind of like this question of, what are the, we've seen this before on some kind of smaller matters, right? Like a associate member appointments or whatever, where we might have like a paragraph saying something about the discussion. You might see the select board minutes as like, oh yeah, associate member appointment, motion, second, vote, and like very sparse, but so not to say that, you know, that would be the case on these, but we wanted to, before approving those minutes, just kind of do a little bit of reconciliation, or at least, you know, a little bit of review to see if there's any kind of weird discrepancies, and then try and figure that out. And probably get together with the select board in another joint session to review all those. Right, but I mean, that's kind of tentative. I've spoken with the, you know, the town administrator. So what I'm going to do is, you know, check in with the town administrator again, and, you know, another few weeks maybe, and see where they're at with this, and then go from there. Right. And Michael, you got anything you want to add? Yeah, please
Yeah,
do.
I just wanted to clarify, and you and Matteo can correct me if I'm wrong, but since not everyone has been steeped in this, for the executive session minutes, there's two steps in the process. So the first step, while we're in executive session, is we approve the minutes, basically saying these minutes are okay. And then they're approved. The next step is voting to release them. And the idea behind the reason you go into executive session is that you're not divulging information that, you know, would other be detrimental to the town. So the second step is to say, okay, for the minutes that we have approved, are looking at the substance of these, are these okay for the public to see now? And is the town not susceptible in any way for the information based on the I think it's 6 reasons you can go executive session. So you can have that conversation where we think they're approved, we're good with them, but we're not ready to release them, or we are, and it's meeting by meeting. So it could be, you know, depending on what we said. So like, there's two different conversations that we would have and two separate votes. If that makes sense. And if you want, you can look at under the open meeting law guide, it has the reasons you go at executive session. Like we always say, it's reason number 3. So if you look at number 3, you can basically use that as a filter to say, this is okay for public versus not, you know, and it's all subjective, but that would be the guidelines.
Jeff, you're muted.
Is it possible just to release part of a particular meeting, or do you have to release the whole thing?
Matteo could correct me. I think you got to do the whole meeting. I don't think you can do part of it. But we could confirm that.
Are we talking specifically about the executive meetings regarding solar?
Yeah, I think those are the only ones we had.
Okay.
Were there any others?
I just want to make sure there weren't, because regarding solar, because the finding that Coles pulled out without prejudice, meaning they reserve the right to sue again. I would say that by releasing those executive minutes, they read those minutes if they ever decide to litigate again, and now they have an advantage.
Right. I think that's the discussion as to go through, and basically it's, you know, it's for purposes of if the town would be at a disadvantage for litigation or something. So like that would be the filter. There might be some meetings where they're just really boring and we had to debate them, but for the most part, I think it is. I mean, it's all about the litigation. It's just what we discussed that we have to decide.
Mhm.
So
I'm sorry.
to be clear, okay, the statute, you know, I think, you know, says that, you know, where there's ongoing litigation, you can enter into executive session, and if you think that discussing strategy may, you know, disadvantage your litigating position. When that litigation is over, therefore it's, you know, you lose that protection. Now, going into, you know, Donna has made it clear that even though the litigation is over, we are within our rights to go into executive session to review the minutes as to whether or not they can be released for anything that may, you know, in addition to like the, the reasons listed in open meeting law, there's other sort of, things that could come into play. Whether or not those would or not, I'm not gonna speculate on, but, being that the litigation is over, we no longer have our reason. Okay, it doesn't, the statute doesn't have any regard for whether or not it was over, with prejudice or without prejudice.
And there's no such thing as attorney-client privilege or litigation privilege or,
Well, so I mean, there's stuff about that in open meeting law and elsewhere referenced by open meeting law. So, I think talking about those specifics might be, we can probably cover that with our review in executive session.
I think Keith's point is a good one, and I would check with Donna, because every executive meeting that she was at should fall under client, the privacy ruling. I don't know that, but I would check with Donna at least before just saying we have
We've
to
been,
read
we've
all the
been in
minutes.
conversation. We've been in conversation with Donna, yeah.
I think we can just do the first pass because that's going to be easy just to approve them. And then I think, if we wanted to invite Donna to a conversation where we're sort of looking at parsing one versus the other, that might be helpful. But, the first passes, or they act, we've got enough of them, that'll take a little bit of time just to sort of make sure we approve them.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to check to see if we could basically release part of it and not all of it too, whether that is legal or not.
Is there any ongoing litigation?
Well, it's not black and white because it's true because they can come back. I mean,
That's pretty black and white that the litigation is over, but I mean, it's, Mateo?
well,
I just want to suggest that this conversation is the kind of thing that perhaps should be an executive session. The reason you're supposed to go into executive session to discuss this question of releasing the minutes.
Yeah, but this is also a conversation that is about open meeting law and how it applies.
No, I understand that. I just want to be cognizant of that discussion strategy.
No, I mean, it's, yeah.
Page 20 of the OML guide, just as a tip.
What does it say, Tom?
Oh, I mean, I don't know if you want to read the paragraph, but
Please do.
the open meeting law requires public bodies to create and maintain minutes of executive sessions. If the disclosure of these records or maintain minutes of executive sessions and to review executive session minutes at reasonable intervals to determine whether continued non-disclosure of the executive session minutes is warranted. Public bodies are not required to disclose the minutes, notes, or other materials used in an executive session if the disclosure of these records may defeat the lawful purposes of the executive session. Once disclosure would no longer defeat the purposes of the executive session, however, minutes and other records from that executive session must be disclosed unless they fall within an exemption to the Public Records Law, General Law, Chapter 4, Section 7, Clause 26, or the attorney-client privilege applies. Although the open meeting law does not define the reasonable interval at which executive minutes must be reviewed, the Attorney General's office has found a review every 3 to 6 months to be appropriate. I'll stop there, but there's more after that. But just to let you know, it's on page 20 of the guide.
Yeah, this is stuff we're talking about right there.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll have more on that for the next meeting. All right, planning board annual report. If anyone has any revisions to it, just send them to me. If anyone has read it and has anything they want to talk about right now, no? Okay.
due on the 20th.
Right. Yeah, so, yeah, if you want to look at it and do a revision, do it in the next several days. All right, so we have now member updates. Okay. Michael, did you have any FERCog stuff that you wanted to talk about? There was a little bit of chatter there. I don't know if it warrants much discussion at this point, but
I haven't heard. Yeah, I haven't. So we all voted for me to be the FERCog representative and Nathan to be the alternate. So they reached out to us to confirm that, and we said yes. But that's as far. There's no meeting or appoint. It has to get. We have to get appointed by one of their bodies. I forget the name of it. So nothing's
Okay.
happened. Yeah, I have the same question as last month. Any word on Deacon?
yeah, but yeah. So I spoke with Deacon. You know, long story short, I think he I'll if we're in desperate need of attendance, I'll you know, kind of pull his chain a little bit. But other than that, we'll not expect him to pull papers, and we'll expect a open spot for the coming election. So he's yeah, he's not going to be back to serve another term. Keith?
Can we back up to the FERTOG representation, and can I put my name on the wait list?
Um,
To be alternate or supernumerary? What do we get one rep and then one alternate? Is that?
you know, I don't know if there's specific FERCog provisions for that, but
Well,
That's-
then in-house.
yeah, no, from an in-house perspective, you know, I would vote on it right now, but I wasn't explicitly on the agenda, so I'll put it on there for next month though, Keith, and
Again, I don't know, again, if the slots are all full, but if need arises, I'm willing to get involved.
all right, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had just a couple other things. You know, you may have noticed that there was never like a real PB communication, only an announcement for the our public hearing. And you know, so as it happens, right, the policy doesn't really say you can use it for like a newsletter. It says you can announce a public hearing or an event or do a public health announcement. And there may be one other one, but newsletter is not in there, right? So the first one we did one once, and you know, one of the members just kind of they sent it out, and then another one of the members said, "You can't, you know, this is way too much information for you know announcing a public hearing." And I was trying to explain what we were doing, and then I realized that kind of halfway through that conversation that the policy doesn't actually say you can just use it as a newsletter. And then as far as, you know, we have this associate member vacancy, and I had intention, I talked about a town meeting and everything. I think, I don't know if at this point we should, you know, I can get something out there, and, you know, we talked about having a deadline. I'll just say, you know, before, was it fiscal year on associate members, right? So I'll kind of time it, I'll time the deadline with that. And you know, if we get someone next month or whatever, or whenever, we can just kind of sit on the nomination until I mean, we can put someone in, I guess, if we get someone, but already halfway through the year, you know what I mean?
I would, if we get someone on and active who's, you know, like, you know, both Keith and Tom have they came to meetings and sort of got a sense of what the issues were and how we worked. You know, if it's working out, we're just going to recommend them. So I don't think we should keep someone in limbo. If we think they're good and they're involved, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. All right. I'll put it on to yeah, maybe January or something. Okay, and then I had the personnel board. I kind of missed a little they were talking about their November meeting, which was last week. You know, the April had reached out, but I was not didn't get back in touch. That one slipped through the cracks for me, but I reached out to her today and I don't really know exactly, as you recall, we were just looking to, get reference to some of the responsibilities that are in the binder we have. So more to come on that. Just a quick little nod that the personnel board does have a job description for the land use clerk on the radar, and we'll see what we can do for giving the opportunity for feedback on that. All right. Anyone else have any updates to share? Oh, Mateo.
So the paperwork for the Attorney General's office for the bylaws that were voted on at annual town meeting in the spring has finally been correctly sent to the AG's office. And so the clock on that has started now, which means we're going to hear in January about those, which I assume is when we're also going to be hearing about the special town meeting bylaw votes. But that's where it is. Lisa and I got all the stuff together and sent it in.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, I also wanted to just make a note as far as the minute revisions go. I asked Mateo to start making any changes in Word with track changes, and then to upload that Word document again to update the existing document there. And adopting this practice will show the red lines like you see in Word. You'll be able to see it on the Google document, right? So that's what.
But we would all see that? Because that doesn't seem kosher.
No, I mean, we all see it anyway. Except you just don't see what changed.
No. I mean, before the meeting. Like if I sent him edits and he made the edits in the Google Doc, and then you sent him edits and he put your edits in, and then Keith did the same thing, we'd all be seeing the edits. We're basically having online deliberation.
No, but it's not. It'll say his name.
It doesn't matter. We'd see what everyone thinks, which is deliberation.
But that's what we've been doing the whole time. If you sent any revisions ahead of the meeting, right, it would go in.
But we don't see other people's suggestions. We just send it to Mateo, and then he makes the corrections or the changes. And then I think the point that Mateo had made was the place where it's problematic is if one or two or several of us are commenting on the same thing. He's not the decider, in terms of what comes out the other end. So in the rare instance where we're actually talking about the same stuff, we would bring that to an open meeting and saying, he said this, you said this, I said this. What do we as a committee want to say? But if you say, change this word to something else, he can do it because he's doing track changes and we're not seeing it. And if no one rebuts what your changes, then he can do it. But if we're seeing it live on a Google Doc, that doesn't comply with.
We're saying it live now, right? If he puts the changes, we like you just said, we email him the changes and he puts them in.
But we don't see them.
We're in session. We're in session though.
Well, if you say the changes while you're in session, but if you send it to him ahead of the meeting, they just get put in, but you don't see that it's a change.
If we send them individually to Mateo, but if
Right.
we open up the Word doc and Michael's already been there and put changes in.
But no, it's not Michael putting the changes in, it's Mateo putting the changes in. It's just a way to make it so that, okay, the only difference between what we do now and what we're gonna do is that you're actually gonna just be able to see what it changes instead of, if you had looked at the Word document when it first comes out and looked at it again and manually gone through and seen where any of the changes were, which is what we have now. Because as viewers of the document, you cannot see the revision history, right?
Can we
So-
see who suggested the change? Like, can I see, oh, Nathan suggested that this change happen here?
No,
But if we see a change, doesn't that mean that somebody changed it?
well, maybe it was just, you know, I mean, you don't know who did it.
Well, we know it's one of the board.
We can narrow it down.
I mean, it could be the land use clerk, just, having, you know,
But
said, you know, looked at the minutes and said, you know, I don't like the way that sounds, and gone back and, made a change.
But what if the land use clerk did it because a board member asked them to?
Well, I mean, you know, that's what we've been doing.
Yeah, but it might have been a mistake is what I think we're learning.
I don't know. I don't think it is.
I mean, reading Mateo's email, it sounded like nothing was, I'm sorry, Mateo, if I'm getting this wrong, but that it wasn't really okay what we were doing. And it didn't seem like there was necessarily a clear solution.
The issue with
Am I getting that wrong?
the issue with what we were doing was that if somebody suggests a change, Mateo adds it, and then, you know, the board might vote on that, and then they don't see that there was any change, right? So maybe, you know, Michael reads the minutes, you know, right after they come out, and then, you know, a few weeks later, someone else goes in, puts a change in, and we don't really see that there's a change, you know, when we just bring up we bring up the document.
So maybe
Right.
just having a deadline that we get our comments in or anything to Mateo before we meet and say no more, you know, if you miss the deadline of putting any changes in, then it is
You
what
just
it
bring it-
is.
Well, then you just bring it to open meeting. I mean, I think,
Yeah.
you know, like the reality is doing editing of minutes in an open meeting, which would be ideal, and what the bureaucrats would want you to do is impractical. So, you know, the idea is to sort of get some of those little things in there. But if we had a conflict and you said red and I said blue, like the whole idea is we'd have to discuss that in open meeting and say, hey, like that, people would want to know that that was something we were disagreeing upon.
So that's the thing is, you know, when we get to open meeting and we go to approve the minutes, we can bring them up and we can review what the changes are.
Yeah, well, I think that part's okay. I mean, I just like, I've never looked at the Google Doc when I do the edits. I sort of get, you know, just speaking for myself, like I get the Word document and I
Yeah.
download it and then I edit it and then I send a thing that's MD edits to Mateo. So I'm just sort of
Yeah.
looking at my little universe and I send it to him. And
Right.
then I think I'm counting on him to sort of, you know, it gets to Keith's point, you know, there's a sequence. So if I'm in first and then Keith comes in and, you know, says my red is really blue, then it's from Mateo to sort of capture that. But if I change something in the first paragraph and Keith changes something in the second paragraph, you know, we should note that it got changed, but there's no conflict there because we're not disagreeing. And so if we accept them as a whole, I mean, it's,
Michael, can I just interrupt there? The
Sure.
problem of priority though is that you might object to what the change that, sorry to pick on you, Keith, but you might object to the change that Keith had made to that paragraph had you known that that change was going to be made.
yes.
And I mean, so this kind of gets back to what Nathan was just talking about in terms of if you read the revised document later than somebody else, you're getting a different version of it. And I think the best system would be for everybody to be reading the same version, sending, you know, continue with the practice of sending in the revisions, but then in the open meeting, you know, either Nathan or me sharing what all those revisions are so that you guys can see them and approve them. In the rare instance, which, you know, in the 1 year I've been doing this, it hasn't really come up, that you do have conflicting revisions in a certain section that you're describing, Michael, then you could have that discussion. But I wouldn't want to, I guess what I'm concerned about is me or any person in the land use clerk position being in the position of having to sort of unilaterally decide what a particular board member meant or decide if there's a conflict between two revisions. I don't think that's something the clerk should be able to do.
No, the way you described it, I agree with. Like we would see in the open meeting what all the changes were, small or not. So we would see the track history, but that sounds different.
That's all it is.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought you were saying we were doing the edits and seeing everybody's changes as opposed to we send in our edits separately. And then in open meeting, we see the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah, it's just still send our edits in separately, but the only difference is instead of editing them in Google Docs, they're gonna be edited in Word with track changes. And I would
Yeah, oh.
say, I would say to, Matteo, when you do this, if it's, a grammatical correction, you don't have to track the change. Only if it's something that, is more substantive.
Excuse me,
Right.
this is Mike Schaefer from Huntley. I don't mean to be rude or anything like that, but you've got a resident here who's been waiting since 7 o'clock to present something to you, and I was wondering if we're gonna get a chance to do that tonight.
Mike Schaefer?
Yeah, from Huntley Associates. We're engineering consultants. Your resident's been, the plaza's been on since 7, in hopes of just presenting something to you tonight, what they would like to do with their property so that we can do the proper preparations for an A&R plan. We had talked with Matteo about that we wanted to discuss with the board tonight, and we were wondering if we could have just a few moments to present something to you. They've been, like I said, they've been on this call for the last 2.5 hours patiently waiting.
I apologize. That was landowner education and guidance at 7:05. We were there and no one said anything.
We thought we were under the last part of the business.
Yeah,
We were waiting for unfinished business.
right.
Unanticipated-
That's where I thought it
unanticipated.
came in. So
We didn't know that.
we didn't know that was under land use, landowner
Education.
education. Now I do.
Okay.
So I thought it was coming at the tail end, and
Wow. Okay. So,
quick learning curve here.
okay.
Thought you were really interested in planning and wanted to
Yeah.
get entertained for a couple
We
hours.
are.
Just say, I
I
commend you
much
for
of
your
it.
patience.
Mm,
What do you got?
All right, so let me present my screen then real quick.
Yep.
Let me just make sure I still have it up. I do.
mhm.
So the plazas would like to, they have a plan. Let me close some of these windows here. So the plazas own a parcel of land, this large parcel here. And they currently live in this building right here. So all this land that you see here is vacant. And they would like to pursue an A&R to divide this property into 3 lots. I think, and Jim, you can certainly add to this, but I think their plan is they would like to move off of Plaza Road eventually. Is that correct, Jim? Can you elaborate on that a little bit for me?
Right, that's what we were thinking, actually, building on Plaza Road, but that may be in the very distant future. We're currently on 314 Wendell Road.
So what they would like to be able to do is access with a driveway off of Plaza Road to a new home in the back. And the issue that we have is we can get 2 lots out of this and 3 lots out of this. There's plenty of land here to do that. But the problem that we have is if I zoom in here, you'll see what the problem is right away, is that we are short 10 feet to the standard 250-foot road frontage. And what we're in the process of doing right now is going out and surveying the property in hopes of being able to put together an A&R plan. We did talk a little bit with Matteo about some options and what we'd like to do. And one of the reasons we wanted to just present this to the board tonight is to see if they would consider granting a variance waiver to the plazas to allow for this shortage in frontage. And thought we may just present it tonight for some any kind of comments that you might have, and to give us and the plaza some kind of direction as to what the inclinations of the board would be in a situation like this.
I've got 2 things for you on that. One is that a variance would be you request that from the zoning board of appeals. 2, the zoning act stipulates very specific reasons for which a variance may be granted. I don't know it off the size of my head, but it has to do with features of the lot or the maybe the shape of the lot. so there are some there's specific things for which a variance can be granted. It's not just like this is we've got so many square feet and we're hoping we can squeeze 2 in here. Well, it's only 1 foot short. It's not that kind of a question per se. Whether or not any of those could be applicable to this lot, I don't know, but that's the review that would be conducted by the zoning board of appeals. And whether or not you go to them with that request would be depending on your own due diligence as to whether or not any of the reasons in the zoning act apply.
Off the planning boards, without looking at the planning board regulations in particular, does the planning board or the variance application, excuse me, back up, is the zoning regulations, do they provide any provisions of lot depth, or are they only worried about frontage? The reason the question I'm bringing up is, would they be looking for the plazas to have a 250-foot direct line all the way back, or could they come in as long as they have 250 feet up front? I'll give you an example.
I mean, 250 feet is for frontage on a way.
Correct.
You're
What I'm asking is that if this is 250 feet right here, let's say, if I could get the darn thing to work, hold on a minute. What's going on? Hold on. So it's a little bit slow sometimes when you're on a call. If I were to get an extra 10 feet from like the neighbor or something like that, is this something that the planning board would accept, or are they looking for 250-foot rectangle all the way back?
If there's 250 feet on the road, then that's frontage. So if you get 10 feet from the neighbor, then that would give it
That
to
would
you.
give us 250 foot here, but it would not necessarily give us 250 foot there. So my question is
But that's
planning
not
board-
on the road.
So how far
Correct.
back does it have to go?
it doesn't have to be
Yeah,
parallel 250.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's 250 feet on the road is what frontage is. That's it. It
Okay.
doesn't have anything, there's requirements for the area of the lot,
Correct.
okay? And
Correct.
there's
Yeah, I didn't see
requirement, the requirements
I
for
didn't-
setback, things
Yeah,
like that.
I didn't see
but,
anything in the regulations that would say otherwise, but I just figured I would ask the question.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
As
The
long as you
square
have
footage.
2 acres, you're okay with, if you have 250 frontage and 2 acres, you're okay.
Okay, yeah, we have plenty of acreage. That's not an issue.
Okay.
Jim and Jen, do you have anything else that you wanted to ask?
No, I think that, that was essentially our major question about this. I mean, we looked at other possibilities of what will happen with the additional land. Right now, we've been in chapter 61. Obviously, that changes.
Have you looked at any flexible frontage, development, which could possibly free you up from the 250 frontage?
You mean like open design?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an option as well. It doesn't, it reduces their buildable lot size dramatically. We kind of did a scenario on that, and we did talk to Mateo a little bit about that. There were some questions that we had relative to open space design, the taxable benefits of it if they were going to dedicate some of this land to the town. And it became quite cumbersome in the sense that the amount of buildable area got much, much smaller, what that was available to them due to the fact that such a large portion of their property would be dedicated to open design. But it was something that we entertained and we took a look at. And it's not totally off the table, but right now we were just trying to explore other options. I think, there was some discussion about giving some of this land to conservation, that kind of thing. So we're just kind of looking at different things to see what our various options are. And I think one of the options that we had right now was really specifically talking about what we needed to do here. We understood that we probably would need to go to the ZBA. That's typically many times the normal process. But in our dealings with and talking with Matteo, some of the questions that we had for him at that time was also just about open space design, which we think we've resolved at this point. So yeah, so I think you pretty much answered the questions that we were kind of looking for, in the sense of what what we were what kind of answers we were seeking. And I guess we'll just go back now and figure out what the next best course of action would be to be able to present a viable project to the planning board. Do you have planning board? Do you have any questions of the plazas relative to what they would like to do and what maybe educate them what some of their options might be? As far as dedicating land and what kind of tax benefits there might be for that, if they decide to dedicate land.
Nothing like that. Just, in terms of approval not required, I mean, that's if the plan is not a subdivision, and there's access to the lot. So I know there's is that Plaza Road on there?
Yep.
So
Yeah, it's right
that's a private road.
No.
So
Town road.
No, that's
that's
the town maintains, I mean, they plow it up to the
okay. Yeah. So
up to
then
the
that's
termination where the Hayes
Farm is.
farm is.
okay. Yeah. Then you're good there, right? So it's as long as every lot or buildable lot would show the required frontage on the on a road, then you're good to go. And if it's if it's not a public road, it just needs it needs to be verified that it's meets the requirements for emergency vehicles and things like that. But so if it's already maintained by the town, then that's good. And just to note, the zoning act, it's chapter 40A, section 10 on variances, and it says owing to circumstances related to the soil conditions, shape, or topography of such land or structures, and especially affecting such land or structures, but not affecting generally the zoning district in which it is located. There's more to it than that, but that's kind of what I was referring to.
Right.
It's
Okay.
It's based on what we heard, it sounds like an A&R path is an easier way, more steps, but easier than the variance, but it depends on who you want to come to.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could maybe, so one of the questions that we had asked Matteo, just to get an understanding of it, is there in the zoning, or sorry, in the open space design ordinance, there was some talk about, so obviously there's a certain percentage of the land that can't be built on, and there was something in there about tax benefits. Is there anything that you can elaborate on that? Because Matteo didn't know too much about it. I'm sorry, I don't have the clause right in front of me. I came from one meeting and I came right home to do this at home, and I have everything in my office. But in the regulations, specifically relative to the open space design, they were talking about possible tax benefits. And I just wondered if you could elaborate on that at all, and if they decided to do open space design and dedicate all the unused property to conservation, is that something that would be available to them? And if so, what does something like that look like?
We don't mean to stump you at the end of the
Gotcha.
evening here.
I'm going to give you an oversimplified answer. The tax benefit would come primarily from the acreage that's put in a conservation easement. That would not be taxed at the same rate, nearly the same rate as the private dwellings, as the 252 acre lots would be taxed.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's a tax break on that part that would be in conservation versus that part that would be actually a buildable area.
That's right. It's a fairly significant one when you do put property under a conservation easement.
Okay.
Okay.
Talking about a tax deductible conservation easement.
The tax that property is no longer taxed at a typical lot rate, 252 acre lot rate.
Yeah.
It's greatly reduced, and I actually think the whoever holds the conservation restrictions, I don't even think there's any I'm not sure there's any taxes on it, quite frankly.
I think the more challenging part that we've run into, and Steve has been around long enough on this, but someone has to hold the conservation restriction.
Right.
And for small projects, it's hard to get, a land trust or someone interested in doing that, or the Concom. So like that usually is the stumbling block of like, we got a small piece of land, who will take it?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you
Thank you, thank you.
getting away from your more interesting conversation to just to hear us what we had to do. And we look forward to presenting something to you, hopefully in the December or January meeting.
Yeah, sorry about the mix-up.
Nope.
No, that's fine. It was a very interesting conversation, believe me, but I'll let you get back to that.
I'm
We're just
glad
gonna
that
adjourn.
I'm glad you
We
enjoyed
use
it.
we use all those edit formats ourselves, so.
Technically, you did get a huge you get a lot of learning as a landowner, right?
Yes. Very much so.
Definitely
Very
an
much so.
education.
All right, have a wonderful
right.
evening.
I was wondering, you guys
Thank
are still
you.
here. Wow, you must be interested in this.
Be back there. All right, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Take care. Take
Yep.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, thanks.
Nathan, you want me to move to adjourn?
I would like that, yeah.
So moved.
Hang on. So I know, Nathan, you're a veteran, right?
It's true.
You are. Are there other veterans on the board? Keith, you are? All right. Well, happy Veterans Day. Thank you for your service.
Oh, that's tomorrow.
That's right.
Tomorrow, yeah. But I have school off. That's,
I was actually hoping we could just hang in there for another 2 hours and 20 minutes and just bring it in with
Yeah,
style.
no thanks.
Rock in the Veterans Day.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley. Did we have a second on the motion?
I'd be happy to second again.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Don't want to. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to adjourn and some lively discussion about Veterans Day. And now I will call the roll. Seifert,
Aye.
Hasty,
Bye.
Bressler,
Aye.
Dekiera,
Aye, and thank you to Nathan and Keith.
Hycroft,
Likewise.
Hi.
Right back at you.
Weston,
Aye.
I'm an aye. All right, meeting is adjourned. Have a good night, everyone, and happy Veterans Day.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thank you. Take care.